Hey, sorry for the interruption, but we wanted to let you know that this week's episode is brought to you by Spotify for Podcasters. Really cool app. Josiah and I use it for every single show that we bring to you every week. You can edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so you can start creating as soon as you log into the platform. You can easily distribute your podcasts to Spotify and everywhere else the podcasts are heard, just like we do every single week. You can also create video podcasts on Spotify, which is really cool. And of course, you can earn money like I'm doing right now by including ads and even podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free. There's no catch. We really love it. We use it every single week. So we encourage you to go download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. All right, let's get back to the show.
Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular Show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast. As always, I'm Josiah, and joined with me is Travis. Travis, how's it going, man? Welcome back to another week, another show of the Print on Demand Cast.
Going good, man. Good to see you, and happy Labor Day weekend.
Yes.
I probably am going to sound ignorant, but I'm not totally sure what Labor Day is unless we are, as a culture, making fun of people that don't have jobs or making fun of people that do have jobs. I'm confused. All I know is that I did a lot of labor today, even though it's not Labor Day, it's Labor Day weekend. I did a lot of labor, and I don't know that I like that very much.
Right. Yeah. Well, it turns out, because I am your Google,
Thank you.
You set up that question on purpose, I feel, because you knew that I couldn't help but not search this. But it appears as though Labor Day pays tribute to the contributions and achievements of American workers, and it's traditionally observed on the first Monday in September. It was created by the labor movement in the late 19th century and became a federal holiday in 1894. So it is an old holiday. That is for sure. Did you disappear? Where'd you go?
Hi.
I don't know what happened just then. I shared my screen and you disappeared.
It was me. I clicked. I was trying to turn up the volume, and I touched my mouse to light up the bar that, and it happened to be on the X for this particular tab. So you Cheers. Well, the more you know.
That's right. I don't have that bumper on me, but next week it'll be a recurring section for the more you know. Travis, before we get into what we have this week, we're going to go directly to, once again, what is becoming my favorite segment of the show, the weekly dad joke.
Time for the weekly dad joke.
So, Travis, to be transparent here on the podcast, my wife gave me an ultimatum, and we know that it's never good when a wife gives ultimatums, but she gave me an ultimatum, and she said it was either her or my addiction to sweets. And the decision was a piece of cake. And that's this week's dad joke. Be sure to use that around your water cooler when your wife isn't around, because she might not. She might not. Mine's in the other room, and I whisper now. So there you go. This week's dad joke of the week, Travis. This week again, we have an interview, which I'm super excited about. Another guy you found on Clubhouse, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Nick Eden before we have the interview?
Yeah, so Nick's been around the Merch by Amazon world for quite a while, and like you said, I actually kind of met him on Clubhouse when I was going into Clubhouse more and being more active on that platform, and kind of struck up conversations. We're in the same rooms talking about the same things, and started kind of communicating offline. Had a couple chats with him. Talked to him on the phone a few times. He's a really smart guy. He has a podcast, Morning Cup of Merch, I believe is the title of this podcast. We'll confirm that when he's on. But he took a break from his podcast for a little while. And I remember when he came back probably a month, 2 months ago, I heard, it came up in my feed and I was like, oh, Nick's back. Let me listen to his podcast. And he's up to some cool stuff. So we're actually recording this intro before sometimes we record it afterwards, but we're recording this before.
We can bury the lead a little bit or maybe kind of plant seeds for what's coming, but we haven't conducted this interview yet. We have yet to chat with Nick. So a little bit different going into this one this week.
Yeah. So it's exciting I'm excited to hear a little bit more about what he was talking about in that one particular episode. But it was interesting because the whole time, I told him this later on Facebook, I just messaged him, but the whole time I was listening to that episode, I was like, yeah, he's telling it like it is. This, he's laying it down. It was a really good episode. And so I just reached out to him and asked him to be on the show. And he said, absolutely, he'd love to. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, as am I. I've yet to meet Nick, but you did share with me a little bit about what that episode was about, and that I'm equally as excited to dig more into that and see what he has in store for us for this week's main event, our interview with Nick Eden.
It's a main event. Talk about your prints. They're sitting on the fence. This is a main event.
All right, Travis, for this week's main event, I'm excited to welcome Nick Eden. And for our listeners, just a little bit about Nick Eden before we bring him on so we know who we're talking to. Nick Eden is a six-figure e-commerce seller primarily in the realm of print on demand. He's the host of a Morning Cup of Merch podcast, which is a weekly podcast dedicated to teaching new sellers how to start and grow their print on demand business. So we're excited to welcome Nick Eden, a fellow podcaster, here to the podcast, the PODcast, Print on Demand Cast. Nick, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us.
Thank you for having me. Travis and I have been talking about this for a while. I'm glad we can finally get it together.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I actually met you on Clubhouse, I think. I know you'd been in the Merch by Amazon world and kind of even done some podcasts and have kind of like everybody knew you, but I wasn't necessarily in that world. I kind of had a different route to get, to where we're at today. And actually met you on Clubhouse. We started chatting, started connecting, and then I found your podcast, and then you took a break I was like, I just found this guy, and he's like gone all of a sudden. But then you came back, and I remember when you came back, I messaged you after I listened to that first episode when you came back, and dude, you laid it down. There was some good nuggets in there. It was good. And I mean, I don't know. Do you remember what episode it is so we can kind of tell our listeners to go check it out?
It was leveraging your POD business for B2B success. And so that was a part of the reason that I actually took a break. And I know so I started the podcast. Originally it was called the 4554 podcast. And that was based around the fact that, the dimensions for Merch by Amazon were 4,500 by 5,400, but they could be used on other platforms. So in my mind, I was like, hey, that's a way that, it's the same thing. The things I talk about can primarily be around Merch by Amazon, but you can use them everywhere, right? And so I did that for a while. I took a break from the 4554 podcast. And then while I was doing that, I was working, I'm in coastal Mississippi. I'm right by Biloxi, Mississippi, where all the casinos are. But I was doing some work in New Orleans. So I was going back and forth there every day. And so this may sound crazy. I hope nobody has me committed, but sometimes you have these ideas and you start, kind of speaking out loud. And after a while, I was like, I should really record this. And so I started doing just kind of like these 15, 20-minute daily drive videos. And because I'm a coffee lover and I always had my coffee with me, I just called it Morning Cup of Merch, and it just kind of stuck. And so when I merged them earlier this year, I ended up taking a break. And I did that for a couple of reasons. The first reason was because with the podcast in itself, what I remember specifically, what made me start the original podcast was that at the time, this was like mid 2017, everybody was in all the Facebook groups and everybody was doing, you had a lot of new people. And most of us, like myself, came from reselling or private label. I had actually been doing print on demand with Teespring and Redbubble, but we were all new to Merch by Amazon. And everybody's posting all these great screenshots of their huge numbers and all these tier ups. But the people who were in the 10 and 25 tier, the people that are just trying to get that first payout, that first sale, they're like, look, this is great. It's inspirational, but nobody's talking to me. And I started talking to that person. And that's just really how it came up. So that being said, for me, the biggest thing was every time I sit in front of this camera, every time I sit and pull up this microphone to my mouth, I want to make sure that I'm adding legitimate value and not giving fluff. And if I'm not adding legitimate value, then I just need to shut up for a while. Right. Wow. And as much as print on demand has changed, it's become a lot more competitive. In a lot of ways, it's gotten a lot better. In a lot of ways, it's gotten worse. Me trying to find my way. One, I was really burned out by the Facebook groups and even some of the stuff that was going on Clubhouse. But in addition to that, I was kind of transitioning some of the things that I was doing that just kind of was not so centered on the rat race of the PLD marketplaces like Amazon and Etsy and Redbubble. And, that's still in the realm that I love. I love this business, but I know that there's just no one way to do it. Right. And so that's why I took a break. I had some things to do, get myself together mentally, trying out these new ventures. And then I'm like, okay, now that I'm back, let me talk about it. And I was excited to talk about it in that first episode because it's opened up a completely different door where you're just leveraging and you're doing B2B. And me coming from a sales and marketing background, I was like, this is the best of both worlds. I have a product that I truly love doing. I love the process of print on demand. I can also do sales very well. And now that I've merged the two, I'm not worried about tier ups anymore. I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about any of that crap. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still in my merch account. I still love it. I still love Merch by Amazon and Redbubble and Spring and all those things. But I feel like there's an entire realm that we're missing. And a lot of people are, because they see the YouTube thumbnails and it always talks about passive income and not having to leave your house and not dealing with customers. And you're leaving so much money on the table. It's amazing because the concept of print on demand, as you all know, is so new still. I mean, it's not new in terms of an industry, but in terms of the mass exposure of it. Right, right. People in my everyday life that have known me for years still fundamentally do not understand what it is that I do. So it gives you this opportunity to introduce this to folks, and it's a concept, particularly for business owners who've been used to the old model of screen printing. It blows their mind, and it makes you an expert in this space. So that's what made me come back. And I remember when I finished that episode, I was like, man, I went back and watched the episode like several times before I even posted. I was on fire for this one. Yeah,
you were. I remember I was literally driving in my car and I'm like, yes, Nick, yes. I'm talking out loud in my car, by myself. And I was excited too, man. Because, you hear, like you said, you hear all of this fluff. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's fluff that has been on the print on demand cast. I mean, it's just, you hear so much noise, I guess. And it was really refreshing for someone to just say, hey, you're leaving money on the table. In fact, Josiah and I, before earlier when we were talking about some future episodes we want to do. And that's literally the title of one of the episodes we want to do. How much money are you leaving on the table, and talk about the different ways that people can take advantage of this huge opportunity that we have with print on demand that, like you said, a lot of people don't understand it. We need to educate them before they really can, understand it. But then once we educate them, we're trusted by them and then can potentially take advantage of that that opportunity to make a sale or to make a relationship that continues to make sales over time. So there's a lot to that, and I really do want to get into that, and we will. Yeah. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, let's get in our time machine and go back to early Nick Eden, and let's hear like where did you go to college for any of this stuff, or what did you do before you were in e-commerce, and just kind of let's talk about Nick post or pre POD.
Yeah. So what's funny is I learned graphic design in college, even though I went for communications. So I attended Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama. While I was there, like I really spent all of so I'm aging myself here a little bit. Coming out of high school, like I didn't have a computer at home when I was a kid. Like, and it just wasn't a thing. I graduated high school in 1998, right? I just turned 41 this past Wednesday. So for me, like, the computer, the internet, all that stuff was just not a part of my everyday thing. Right. And when I got to college, going to college and having a 24-hour computer lab is mind-blowing for someone who is like, I grew up with, like, a lot of women in my family are educators. And so I grew up with so many books. And like at my mom's house, there was these huge bookshelves. My grandmother's house, these huge bookshelves. And so I was an information junkie, right? So when I got to college, I'm like, all this is on a computer. I'm spending all my free time there. And I'll never forget, there was a guy at the time, he was running for student government president. And he was in the computer lab, maybe a row up from me. It's funny because we're actually like really close friends to this day. And he was creating a flyer on Microsoft Publisher. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I had always drawn when I was a kid, right? But for me, it was like, this will never leave the paper, right? It's like, I have no idea how I could ever get this on a computer or anything like that. And I was like, this is so cool. And I asked him, I was like, what program is that? He's like, it's Microsoft Publisher. After that, I was hooked. And so I just started doing graphic design. What ended up happening was I spent so much time there. People would look for me to do their flyers and stuff, right? So I'm running for dorm queen. I'm running for homecoming queen. I'm running for this. I'm doing this. Can you help with this? And it just turned into like a legitimate side hustle. And in retrospect, I probably should have switched my major to graphic design. But I was already, it's one of those things where it's like, do I really want to relearn this? Because I was a broke college kid and now I'm actually making money doing this. Maybe I shouldn't, disturb the wheel any. And so I did that all throughout college. When I got out of college, I moved first to Birmingham, Alabama, and I worked there a little bit. And then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. There I was working for a producer that was one of the in-house producers for TI. So I was hired to do graphics for his company because he had his own projects that he was releasing, all these different things. Now, what's funny is in all of this time, I never thought about the concept of using these and selling my own products, right? It was always service-based. And that's great. And it was wonderful until about 2008 when the market crashed. And we were in the middle of a recession. And I actually found myself taking more people to court, more of my clients to court to collect than actually getting new clients because everybody was broke, right? Yeah. And so I had to start over. And I've had to reset a couple times in life and it's totally fine. But it was about a year after that because the other part of it was what I really wanted to do was I wanted to be a singer. I put out several independent albums, primarily R&B, done pretty well overseas. Amazingly enough, overseas they appreciate American music more than Americans appreciate American music. So
that seems about right.
Yeah. So I put the first single that I put out was in July of 2009. And what was so interesting about it was the service that I used to put the music out actually had an option with Amazon to where you could utilize their service called Create Space. So if somebody wanted to get the physical copy of your CD, they could order it through Amazon. Amazon CreateSpace would print it, pack it, and ship it out. And that was the first thing that I ever sold online was actually music, and it was Amazon, and it was print on demand.
That's awesome.
And it did not dawn on me how full circle that was until maybe like 2 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago. But I was like, wow, that's like completely full circle that happened. After that, I was just like, okay, what else can I sell online? I'm still trying to be, but it's to me, I call it mailbox money, because I'm like, okay, if I can do that, maybe I could do this. Then I started learning about eBay, and then I started learning about, just like the reseller community. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I never really was a person that was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take it just through the roof. But I was like, because I still want to be a musician. And I still thought that the best way to make money was through service-based businesses. So I kind of teetered in and out of it for a few years until about 2015 when I started selling on Teespring. And from there, it was the old Teespring model where you do Facebook ads, you do, you run curated groups, all those types of things. And some of those groups are still active. My Teespring account does still make money. It's spring now, but it still makes money. I don't spend as much time as I used to with it, but and in all this time, I had no clue that Merch by Amazon was even a thing. I had moved into private label, and I'll never forget. This was 2016. It was October 10th, 2016, and I won't forget that because that was the date that they shut everybody down. I was at the time selling on eBay. I was selling on Teespring, and I had another account for Amazon that I was doing retail arbitrage. Created another account to do this private label product. My fault was I waited until August to actually start and source these products. So in October, when my products are still caught up in customs in China, we get an email from Amazon on October 10th saying, if you have not created your first shipment by October 10th, you cannot sell fulfilled by Amazon during the fourth quarter. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I had heard about, I'd heard about it. I'd heard about merch before from Glenn from the Merch Minds podcast when he was on Manny Coates podcast. But again, I was so in private label mode. It didn't even dawn on me that, hey, Amazon is now into the realm that you've already been selling with and doing decently well on Teespring. You should probably look at that. I'm in private. I'm like, look, I'm looking for the $1 million Q4.
Right.
And it just kind of went from there. So when they said you couldn't sell, I was like, okay, well, let me try Merch by Amazon because they were talking about it in the group. I signed up. I didn't realize at the time there was a 6-month waiting period. Now it's like 2 weeks. I'm like, you kids have no idea what we old whippersnappers have gone through. But
back in my day,
back in my day, you had to wait 5-6 months for merch. But so I signed up, and then I signed up for Redbubble because I was like, I cannot waste this Q4. And thankfully, Redbubble gave me an amazing Q4, which is one of the reasons I kind of stepped into merch when I finally got in. Saying, okay, I know this isn't the end all be all. There are other platforms out there that can legitimately provide a living for people.
Yeah. So Nick, a quick question. While you were talking and you mentioned you wanted to be a musician, a singer, I did a quick Google search, and I have to ask, is this an album cover of yours?
Oh my God, that is not an album. That is my Reverb Nation cover photo. Reverb Nation was the site for musicians. So what's funny about this is that picture was taken the first time I went to New York. I got booked in 2007 by a guy named DJ Dance, I want to say, and he booked me to perform at the Sugar Bar in Harlem, which was the bar owned by Ashford and Simpson, the R&B duo from Motown. And while I was there, I ran into someone. She was the aunt of another R&B singer who had just recently released an album on Def Jam, and she was like, hey, listen, you need to go to this place, and gave me all these places to perform. This was at Village Underground. And so I took the picture, and then I grabbed that for the background guys from the website, and I used that as my my cover photo on Reverb Nation. That's and then another page called Our Stage.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Nick, we have national recording artist Nick Eden on the Print on Demand cast.
And you gotta watch
this. I'll say this: I have not performed, written, or recorded since 2014. So a little rusty.
So it sounds like so Travis and I always kind of dream about what it would be like to have a POD gathering, weekend, summit, whatever. But it sounds like, should that ever happen, that there needs to be a karaoke night with the three of us.
Yeah,
throwing down some karaoke, perhaps some harmonies. I think it needs to happen. I think it needs to happen.
I love it. I'd absolutely love it.
Are you in, Nick? Are you in?
I'm in.
Okay.
I'm in. Let's get
that sounds good.
Back up and let's get it done. I'm 100% in.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. Well, you heard it here first. Again, there's all kinds of scoops on the POD cast this week, and you have to watch the YouTube video version to see that picture that we're talking about. As my quick fingers
like
Googled
60 pounds ago.
As soon as he said R&B artist, I opened a separate tab and just Googled because I needed to find evidence of this, and hopefully we can, if there's any music still out there, Nick, we can definitely put that out there as well, because I legitimately would love to hear it as well. So we talked about kind of your origins and how you kind of got started in all of this. And I've heard recently that you're doing some fulfillment for influencers, which is intriguing to me because, Travis and I have our own separate print companies where we do the production, and mine at the moment is doing a lot of work with influencers as well and fulfilling for influencers. So how does that work for you? And what does that look like on your end for fulfilling for influencers?
So it comes in two ways. The first is I'm a big believer so for context, when I decided that I was going to do a podcast, I teetered back and forth about should I incorporate YouTube into this? Because I was like, it's one thing to try to grow a podcast and try to grow a YouTube channel. I had my YouTube channel legitimately since 2006. I just never did anything with it. So when I made the decision in early 2018 that I would do it, I was like, okay, they had already changed all of the partner guidelines and all that, because I was a monetized partner on YouTube at one time before that guy who I won't speak of, took a video or something that we won't talk about and screwed it up for a lot of YouTubers out there. But I was like, okay, well, I recognize the power of a small dedicated audience. And so what I ended up doing was I reached out to some micro influencers because, especially on YouTube, you can't have the merch shelf until you've reached 10,000 subscribers.
Okay.
But we obviously, all the three of us know how important things like merch are to people who are, building content. We know how much of an actual asset it can be. And for me, I knew what it was like because even though I wasn't selling merch, just on affiliates, it's funny because I made more money with YouTube when I had 300 subscribers than I do now. I was making at peak like $200 off affiliate sales a month. Wow. Right. So I went to a few of these folks that I knew. A few of them are actors. They are like sketch actors they're on YouTube, and they're actors out in LA, but they still do, build their own content on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. And I was like, listen, I can do the fulfillment on your orders. Even if it's something as simple as setting up a spring store for them, which again, because we're in the industry, we take for granted that most people have no clue what this is. Sure. They don't. And so I went to a few of them. They said yes. There were a few, and I was like, okay, well, at first I wasn't going to be, for me, because they were friends, I was like, listen, I'm just going to do this for you because I think this is something that you need. And they're like, well, look, how much do you charge? And I'm like, I'm not really charging anybody. It's just, again, because we're friends, sure. Right? So they're like, no, I want to pay you. I'm like, okay, give me $250 just to set everything up for you. I can do an initial round of designs for you, and then you can just kind of take it from there. And that actually turned into a business model, because what would end up happening was they would suggest someone, and then someone else would suggest someone. And so it was a lot of one-offs, which I'm totally fine with. Yeah. But, it's still one of those situations where it's like, okay, I know that the concept works, right? Yeah, so if I set up your Spreadshirt, and I primarily, with those type of the micro influencers, I'll use Spring or Spreadshirt. Right. Okay. If they want to get into something a little bit more where they're a bigger actor or actress or something like that, then we'll go the Shopify route, WooCommerce, Squarespace, those types of things. That turned into an entirely separate business model for me, because I have, I still work full time. I'm sorry, I have a great job. Like, it would literally take me making probably about 3 times what I make at my job for me to leave. Plus they pay for all my health insurance. So anyway,
those benefits.
Right. But it's primarily in the political space, which has done wonders for me in terms of t-shirt ideas and different niches. But I also know a lot of social and, social justice groups and civil liberties groups that they don't have merch. And I'm like, you have to realize you have some of the most passionate supporters in the country. So for you to not have a merch store, that's crazy, especially when you have, the organizations that are national organizations and they have local chapters. I'm like, you're really leaving a lot here. Oh, well, we screen print. And then I told them, I was like, listen, and I only did this for one person because they were in Atlanta. I said, where's all of your current inventory? It's in our storage unit. It's down the street from the office. I said, I'm going to come up there next week. And we're going to go into the storage unit, and I'm going to show you how much money you're losing by having your inventory sitting there. And when I tell you, because they do this big national convention every year, this was earlier this year. They still had shirts from like 2010, 2011.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. And they're just sitting there. And I knew what was going to happen. I was like, you order a lot of smalls. It's never fails, because I used to work for a casino down here, and I was in charge of the orders for all of them. They always say, Nick, you never order a lot of smalls. I'm like, most people are fat. Like, I'm sorry. Like, just the reality is most people are not going to get a small, and it's always the smalls that are left over, right? And of course, it's the same thing with them, that all the way back to 2010, 2011. I said, this is how much money you're leaving on the table right now. Add to the fact that the only thing that's in this storage unit are these shirts. So not just the cost for the shirts, but the cost that you're paying every month to store these. This is how much money you're leaving on the table. And I just kind of did a breakdown. I actually created this a few years ago when, I don't know, are you all familiar with Mike Wall?
Mike Wall? Yeah, I do. I know Mike Wall. Yeah, the business to business guy that used merch at the tire store and the pizza stores and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So when Mike started first really making his, and I just called it, it was, he gave it another stamp. It was just something I had always kind of done. But I remember I made a free download for anybody to just, it was on my Gumroad page. I think I actually got a download of it, even though it's terribly out of date now, but where I just kind of broke it down. And so I brought that sheet with me and I broke it down. I was like, listen, if you went the POD model, we could do this, and this. And they were like, can you do this store? Can you do a merch store for us for under $1,000? I said, well, it depends. I said, how many designs do you want up? What kind of turnaround do you want on this store? And what kind of maintenance do you need for it? They're like, look, I don't know the questions. I don't know the answers to any of that. This is not my wheelhouse. I said, okay, I'll do it. And the only reason I'm not saying their name is because obviously there's, their NDAs, things like that. Sure. But I ended up doing a store I just charged them $750 to do the store. I set up a Shopify site for them. I used their logo. I used some mock-ups that I got from Place It. Some videos that they could use for promotion. And that was the initial setup. And they paid me $150 to update it. And essentially, whenever they want to add something to it, I just go in and add it. And I mean, like literally for about 30 minutes worth of work, I got that site up in an afternoon. And I'm like, this is a model that is, I'm like, if I can just take this and systemize this for the micro influencers at this price, and then for the social service groups at this price, this is something that I can take, and I don't have to worry about finding the next dabbing Santa, the next, pinata riding chili pepper. And I'm saying these stuff because I've actually designed these and sold them before. But I'm like, I just made, more money in one afternoon doing that than all the time that I've spent trying to do the rat race of this kind. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm still doing merch, I'm still doing niche research, I'm still doing all of that. But I can't ignore what's on this side. This is
for sure.
It's an amazing opportunity.
There's a ton of opportunity out there. There's a ton of businesses that and like you said, like social groups and political groups and activist groups and all those places, they need somebody like us to come alongside of them and kind of share what we know and give them an opportunity. So I'm curious, how do you determine, so for this, let's just use this one example that you used with Shopify. First of all, are you, did you just like tie them in directly to Printful and they're paying Printful, or are you going to be a middleman in this and capture some of the dollars on the fulfillment as well? And then the secondary question is how do you determine which one of those models you're going to do if in fact you're doing both of them?
So good question. The first part of that is I just straight up build out of the site is the main thing, and then the maintenance. I don't middleman myself between them and Printful. What I do is I set it up for them. We do a forward on the site to where it masks to their website, and then I just let it go from there. And whenever they need something, I have a retainer where I charge them between $100 and $150 a month. I can work with most budgets, but for the convenience of being able to go in, make some changes on the site, add an article, or add a new type of shirt or a new product to the merch store, to me that's worth it.
Are you doing design for that as well, or are they giving you designs and you're just doing the mock-ups for their designs?
That's the beautiful part. Most of them already have all of the logos that they're going to do. Right.
Cool.
So if they have a new initiative, it's just if they have their main logo or a new initiative that they're starting. For me, I'm not, and the reason that I got out of full-time graphic design to begin with was because dealing with the client portion in that there are a few groups that realistically, if they said, hey, can you design a logo for this initiative, then I would consider doing that. But for the most part, I feel like this is the most seamless relationship possible. You already have what you need in terms of the visuals. I just got to make it to where it's commerce. It's some of the most stress-free, beautiful business relationships I've ever had. That's why I don't get involved with like the middleman part of the money. Like this is it's like the most zen thing I've ever done in business.
So are there people, I know you mentioned doing some spring stores and some Spreadshirt stores. Is it the same thing where you're just like setting up a spring account in their name and then it all flows through them? You're not in the middle of any of these things.
Yeah, I'm not in the middle of any of those things, particularly with the micro influencers, because most of them, they have their platforms and they know where they want to go with it. They just need the vehicle for it. So I just provide the vehicle. I do it. It's just a one-off. And I mean, let's be honest. The reality is that they could Google and do it themselves. I'm the convenience factor for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I say that all the time where a lot of people will pay for something that they don't know how to do. They could take the time to learn to do that themselves. But we forget the convenience factor where they're willing to pay a Nick or myself or Travis to do it for them, so they don't have to dedicate that brain power to learning how to do it, as simple as it may be, but they'll pay for the convenience of not having to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. I know, Josiah, you guys are doing some influencer, or you're working with some influencers as well, but it's a different model for you.
Yeah.
You guys have
the production's all in house.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a little bit of a different vibe.
Yeah. But I think this is an excellent, I think you could probably go either way. I know another company that has some ins with some NFL players that have like their own branding and things like that. And they set up Shopify stores for them. And then same kind of thing that you're doing, Nick. And then they, they get production places to, I've been in contact with them and have a couple of their players, we're fulfilling for them, and they take a cut out of the middle. So they, say you'll make this much, and then they, pay me, and then they take that cut. And I'm not sure if they set up the stores for free as kind of their hook, or if they also charge for the stores. But there's so many different ways you can go with this. There's a lot of different ways you can make money, with these business opportunities. So Nick, why don't you kind of give us maybe some tips if I wanted, if I'm new to POD, maybe I'm in year 10, I just got into it. What kind of questions or what kind of things am I going to say to that, that business owner down the street that doesn't really know anything about print on demand, and I want to be their assistant, and making this happen for them. If it's, whichever direction you're going to go, or whichever model you're going to go with, if you're going to take a piece of the merch, or if you're just going to charge an upfront cost to set up the shop, or whatever it is, how do I approach them? What are the questions I need to ask? What do I need to get, what do I need to communicate with them to have them be able to trust me with something like this?
Good question. Well, first I will say this. I haven't had to cold call in a while, thankfully. So, but if I were cold calling, and I am a 10-tier seller in the merch program, that's even better. And the reason that I say that is because for me, I just know that somebody is more likely to understand Amazon as opposed to Spreadshirt or Spring that they've never heard of before. Right?
Yeah,
sure. Sure.
So I would probably approach that person, and I would say, I would ask them about their employees, about how many employees they have, and just express to them, listen, I'm a design vendor with Amazon.com's Merch by Amazon program. I'd like to see about saving you some costs on your uniform inventory, your t-shirt inventory, by utilizing an Amazon model on it. Now, again, I haven't had a cold call in a while, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty. But essentially, not in a role play method, but how I would explain it to them is that the money that they spend on inventory and having to do minimum orders, which is why a lot of them like to stay away from it, they can actually cut that out. I would then present them with a one sheet of all the products that Amazon offers. So basically all you have to do is really just take the mock-ups that are in your merch account, screenshot them and put them into it. Hey, this is this and this is this. With an Amazon model, I definitely would take a piece of it. Obviously, you will overprice it a little bit. And I say overprice it, but like a standard shirt probably go for like $25.99, right? And take a piece from there. You don't have to do a large chunk of it because it's also benefiting you, because as people buy, you're going to tier up.
Right.
After show, I would have that one sheet prepared to show them. Just ask them if I could have a few minutes of your time, see if I can save you a little bit on your inventory cost and keep you from spending so much money on t-shirts. And then I will present it to them in another way. And this is something that I actually did with a pizza shop in Marietta, Georgia, right before I moved back to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I was already working with them, supplying their pizza box toppers. That pizza box top is a business that I think people really sleep on. But essentially, I was providing their box toppers for them free of charge. I get them 10,000 box toppers at a time. And then I would design about a quarter of the page I would use for any of the coupons that they wanted to offer, provided that they would let me use the other 3/4 of the page that I could sell for advertising. So the reason that this worked was because this is one of the only types of advertising that people invite into their homes, right?
Yeah.
People generally will get those pizza box toppers, and if it's like, hey, order 3 large pizzas and you get a free order of breadsticks, people are going to take that. They're going to put a magnet on it. They're going to put it on on their refrigerator, or at the very least, it's going to be at the top of their junk drawer in the kitchen. But they're going to see it. I went back to the pizza shop and said, listen, if you wanted to just make this one, let's do this for your uniform so you're not spending a lot of money on inventory. But also, let's make one where let's take one of those coupon spaces, and if people purchase a shirt, they'll get 20% off on the next order if they wear it into the shop. And I told them, I said, that way, they'll be a walking billboard for your business, and you're going to make money off of them buying the shirt.
Yeah.
And
that's genius, man.
He was like, that's wonderful. He was like, let's take the let's take the garlic knots off of there and put the t-shirt on there. and so we got it up on Amazon, and we got the what was it? The QR code. I made a QR code for it so it could take people right to it. I mean, and it was that simple.
Wow.
And I just showed them, like, here's how much money you made every month. I don't mind, because they don't know anything about other t-shirt business. Look, these are the shirts that you sold, and this is how much you made, and this is, minus my percentage. This is your payout. They don't care about the dabbing turtle. So I have no problem showing them my account.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. That's amazing. That's super awesome. We had Yang on recently, and we talked to him. We're talking about Merch by Amazon, and one of the questions we asked him was, give us some tips for somebody who's caught in that tier 10, tier 25 Merch by Amazon, black hole. And so my question to you is, do you feel like this is the best way to get out of tier 10, tier 25? Or if not, maybe there's some other tips that you'd, be willing to share with our listeners.
I feel like with the competition that's going on right now, as more and more sellers are getting into merch, I genuinely feel like this is the best way to do it. But I do feel like that this is a road that won't be traveled often.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. It's not low-hanging fruit,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this would be the way that I would suggest folks do it. But I understand that most people will not go that way. I'll say this. If I had to give you a tried and true method that works. So again, for context, I'm in a music fraternity, and a lot of my fraternity brothers are high school and middle school band directors. And my oldest daughter, she's in band. And one thing that is universal across the board in almost every city across this country, the band boosters hate t-shirts because they spend a lot of money. They spend a lot of money, and people do not get the shirts. So if I had to give you just an easy win for B2B, and you're in that 10 tier, I would say go to the high school, talk to the band director, ask if you can get in touch with the band booster president, and talk, because at this point, a lot of them don't even want to do shirts at all, and just say, hey, listen, I have a solution for you, because let's be honest, most of band parents, it's that social proof of Amazon. Mostly everybody whose parents are everybody who is a parent, they got an Amazon Prime account. Almost everyone. Or if they don't, they know someone who does. And say, listen, we will place these on Amazon. People can buy them. Whoever buys them and comes to the function with their shirt on, they got it. If they don't, they don't. Period. Most, especially if you tell them, and if this is just about getting out of the 10 tier, just listen, I won't charge you up front. We'll just take whatever the logo is, put it on the shirt, and go from there. Now, there's an interesting part to this now. Mm-hmm. You also have to keep in mind, especially with Amazon, that they are not playing when it comes to any type of trademark infringement.
Yeah.
So if you have, you're going to have to provide some type of proof that you can actually do that. I've done this for band boosters before through Teespring, and even Teespring is as many P4P copies as they get, copycats as they get. I still had to send documentation to Teespring saying, hey, he's good to go using this. So cover your bases with that. But that's one of the easiest ways that you can do it. It's one of the easiest ways, because it's not a situation where you're walking into a brick and mortar business where they have a secretary or another person who's set up to be a gatekeeper. They are literally looking for the best way to get the band's image and awareness out there at the lowest cost. And for what it's worth, these band boosters, these parents, they will spend a lot of money. Trust me, the band boosters at my daughter's high school are set to spend well over $500,000 this year on the band. So that would be like the easiest way for me. But I know some people are just still going to want to go and, do a dabbing shirt. So I only get on dabbing because I can't believe people are still buying dabbing shirts. For whatever reason, in Germany, I keep selling these dabbing shirts, and I can't understand why on earth people are still buying this stuff.
The fad is just slowly migrating over to Germany. There's a 5-year delay, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
It's funny. Pop sockets are still huge in Munich. I don't know what's happening, but it's
right.
Really
Exactly.
So, Nick, we're going to move to a set of questions that we ask every interviewee here on the POD cast.
Okay.
Something that we just came up with a nice bumper for right before we pressed record. So we're going to go straight to the magic questions. We'll see if that gets by YouTube police when we post it later. If not, we'll have to pivot. But I don't care. I think it's funny. So the magic questions. So for the first one, man, tell us about a time when something happened in your business that felt like a failure. You said you've had to kind of regroup and restart a couple times. But tell us what one of those instances was like when you felt like, man, I don't know where I go from here.
August of 2016. I'll never forget. So in the midst of getting into POD and still pursuing music, this opportunity to go into event marketing dropped on me in 2010. And that turned into that experience, because I worked primarily with the US Bank, pushing the Harley Davidson Visa. That turned into an opportunity with a tobacco company who wanted to do sampling at some of the bike rallies, but they had no idea what they were doing. My wife and I started a marketing agency, and I mean, this was legitimately a 6-figure check over the course of 2 months. That business ran from 2013 to 2016. The mistake that we made was that 75% of the business was based around tobacco sampling. And the crash happened, and it happened really hard, because in August of 2016, they changed the federal regulations for tobacco sampling, and they put cigars and little cigars in the same category as cigarettes. And so you could no longer hand out free samples of the cigars. And that also included pipe tobacco. They just grouped everything into one category. And for what it's worth, it was already a bit of a moral conflict for me. Listen, I don't judge anybody for what they do, but I lost my grandmother to lung cancer. So it's always a bit of a moral conflict for me when it came to that. but this was still a significant portion of income for the business. And we tried to revamp. We tried to, say, okay, well, maybe we can work on a sales model, a POS model, which for me was like, okay, this is cool. I can create POS. This is fine. I've done this before. And they were just like, no, we're just going to move on. We're just not going to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I mean, 75% of our business's income was wiped out by one federal regulation.
Ouch. Yeah, that's painful.
I learned two things from that. The first thing I learned was that, and I've not done it since, that I would never have more than 10% of my income come from one source. Mm-hmm. That was the first thing that I learned. The second thing that I learned was I need to really get and dig into this product-based part of the business, because for service-based businesses, the fourth quarter was usually the worst time. Everybody's doing all their fiscal planning. Nobody's spending a lot of money unless it's something specifically geared towards the winter seasons. And we were doing festivals. That's all spring. It was the worst time of year for us. Meanwhile, my buddies that had really gotten into reselling and private label were making six figures in the fourth quarter alone. So I was like, we got to get into the product side of this. Yeah. So those were two very important things that I learned.
Yeah, those are huge. I mean, the whole diversification, we talk a lot about that on the podcast. It's not smart to have all your eggs in one basket, especially as we've said, a basket as volatile as Amazon in particular. I mean, you hear horror stories, suspensions, all of that stuff on the Amazon Seller Central side. And then you hear of account shutdowns on Etsy and Merch by Amazon, and they don't really give a reason. And, so diversification is super important. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great reminder for our our listeners. Just, hey, let's be thinking about this and making plans, not just thinking about it, but actually making plans to diversify if this is in fact something that you want to do long term. All right, so we're getting long on time, so let's jump right into
one more. Right?
Yeah, let's just do one more. Let's do the crystal ball question.
Yes,
so Nick, put on your little hat, and from, I don't know, ancient times, and look into your little crystal ball. And what is that hat called? You know what I'm talking about? The one that the genie wears or whatever. Anyway, what do you think the future of print on demand is? And this can be, you can like answer this from whatever direction you want to. If you want to answer it from, the provider's side, or from the producer's side, or from the customer side, what do you think the future of print on demand is? What does it look like?
I think the future of print on demand is regional. Here's the reason I say this. There are so many giants. I would say right now, and from a marketplace standpoint, that Amazon right now does have the title of king of print on demand. Fulfillment wise, I would say Printful has that title. As these companies get bigger and bigger, and as we kind of have this backlash, I guess you could say, on major conglomerates, I think we're going to see the rise of more and more smaller businesses being embraced, and people really digging into their regional economy. I saw this a lot. One of the clients, we used to run a demo program for Whole Foods under the marketing agency. And the energy that you would see from the folks, where it was really important that their foods were produced locally, that they supported the local growers, the energy, I've seen that kind of transition into other things. One of the things I get a lot of times on Etsy is, particularly after the protest last summer, and a very public incident that happened with a pretty prominent Etsy and merch seller. I started getting people all the time, hey, because one of my Etsy stores is primarily based around African culture and heritage, and at least once a week for the longest, it'd be like, hey, is this a Black-owned business? I used to have to send selfies to people so they would know right, that it was actually me. Yes, I'm actually me, and I'm actually black. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
But but just kind of I've seen it happen in the area of produce. I've seen it happen with music. I think that what's going to eventually happen is some of these companies just get so big that people are going to be looking for the smaller, more customer service based, faster services. If I've said time and time again, one of my ultimate goals is to have my own fulfillment center, and largely because after a while, Printful gets too big. No disrespect to them.
Sure.
Listen, you're supposed to want to grow your business, right? We're all in business to grow, right?
Yep.
At a certain point, though, you become too large to pivot. And I think customer service will lack in that area because of it. And that smaller, more regional kind of feel. Like, are you guys familiar with the store Big Frog?
Yep, I am. I know Big Frog.
Listen, for the longest, Big Frog was my go-to, because if we had an event and we went to a city, I knew I could get shirts done for this, in a day. That means something to people. It means something to people to know that, okay, it's here, it's local, I can reach out and I can touch you. And I do think that may be the future of print on demand.
Man, Nick, this is my favorite answer. As a small business owner, as a local regional producer of merch or of print on demand products, I freaking love that answer. And it gives me hope. So thank you, man. You're making me all, warm and fuzzy inside.
Hey, listen, man, the big ones are going to get so big, man. The bubble eventually bursts, and it's up to the smaller ones that can pivot to make the change.
Yeah. It's really funny, though, because, most of the people that come on a show and we ask that question, they say the exact opposite. They say, yeah, the mom and pop shops, it's going to be hard for them to compete against the big Printful and the Printify. And I don't know about you, Josiah, but my numbers don't show that. Like, we keep getting more and more people. And to your point, Nick, it's, a lot of it's local. It's just people that they need to have a face behind the sale. They want to have a phone conversation before they swipe their credit card or whatever. So, so I definitely, who knows what the future is, and, mad respect for all of our past, people who have come on and said opposite things or things that are different than that. But I tend to agree with you. I do think as things expand, we as people want to get smaller. We want those connections. And so, yeah, man, that's my favorite answer. Yeah. You won the prize.
Awesome. Well, Nick, before we wrap things up, again, thank you for taking time for coming on the show. But if people want to find out more about your podcast, more about your projects, what you got going on, where can they find you? I want to give you a couple of minutes here at the end to just plug and promote away, give links, give sites, social media handles, what have you, so people can find more of your content and glean off of more of your wisdom as they have in this episode.
Absolutely. So you can, depending on your social media outlet of choice, you can follow me on Instagram at Nick Eden. You can follow me on Facebook, Nick Eden Print on Demand, TikTok at Nick Eden, Clubhouse at Nick Eden, and YouTube at Nick Eden. The beautiful thing about it is, on all of those platforms, there's a link tree. And you can just click that link tree and it will take you to all the other destinations.
Perfect.
Each of them serve their own purpose. Right now on my Instagram page, I'm doing a Q4 30-day challenge. I was actually out at a log cabin last night, so I didn't get yesterday's video up, but I'm putting up 2 today. But it's, we're 30 days out. We're less than 30 days out from Q4. And so each day is an accountability day, and that's exclusive to my Instagram. On TikTok as well as Instagram, you'll see a lot of my tutorials. I do these little quick minute tutorials on using the GoDaddy Studio app to create designs. And then on YouTube, you kind of get everything. You get the video version of Morning Cup of Merch. You get another series that I started called Rate Merch, where I go through and rate different print-on-demand platforms. And just all the content I've been putting out for years. And as long as people still want the content, and as long as I can still provide actual value to folks, I'm going to keep doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man, for coming on. And for those of you listening, please go follow Nick on all of those platforms. As you can tell, he's got a lot of good information and some approaches to stuff that might be outside the traditional box that you might have been approaching things from. I know there's been a lot in this episode that I've even thought like, wow, that's a really cool way to to approach this idea that some people are thinking of in a more conventional way, for lack of a better term. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to our karaoke night that is pending.
Hey,
it's gonna happen.
With it. I am totally with it. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. We want to thank Nick Eden one more time for taking time out of his schedule to join us here on the Print on Demand cast. Travis, that was a phenomenal interview, one that I think there's so much for our listeners to learn. You know, you and I were just talking before we pressed record. There's lots of different ideas. If you're out there and you're listening, you're just starting, you have a Teespring store or you have a Merch by Amazon store, it doesn't disqualify you from leveraging influencer marketing or B2B business. As we heard with Nick, you can volunteer to set up a spring store for someone, because that's knowledge that you have that a lot of people don't have. So don't count yourself out. There's more ways to diversify income, even just using spring store, and you don't have to be the one that's producing it to make the money.
Right. And I think even to go a step beyond that, you know, don't sell yourself short if you've never set up a spring store. You're still ahead of that business owner. You know, you can figure it out a lot quicker because you have some knowledge of the space. You understand the concepts. So, you know, be it Spreadshirt, be it Spring, be it, you know, a Shopify, whatever it is, you're going to have a lot better idea of how that, you know, that order flow and the whole thing. You know, you've heard us talk about placeit.net. You can do all the mock-ups. I mean, you have the knowledge, whether or not you realize it. This is kind of where that imposter syndrome comes in sometimes. And we don't realize how much further along we are down this road than other people. And so we don't realize how much knowledge we actually have, and we sell ourselves short. But there's a real opportunity. I loved some of the stuff that he was saying about, you know, the pizza box toppers and just, you know, getting a merch shirt on the pizza box topper. How awesome is that? You know, something that people take into their home. They see that and they're like, oh, I can get 20% off or whatever, a free dessert or whatever, if I just buy the shirt. And that's a cool shirt anyway. I'm going to buy it, you know, and it's such a unique way to look at, not just Merch by Amazon, but print on demand as a whole.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. That's something that, you know, I think actually there was one Rocky Mountain Reseller Conference, I think the last one that you had, where you had kind of a print on demand, you know, stream for the track rather for that conference, where there was a guy that was talking about how he had that same kind of idea of, hey, I'm going to go into this restaurant around the holidays. Valentine's Day is coming up, St. Patrick's Day, Thanksgiving, whatever, and saying, hey, here's a shirt, one shirt. And then again, incentivize your customers to become your walking advertisements of 20% off a Valentine's dinner or whatever that looks like. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do B2B wise that not only will, of course, bring in revenue, help the business you're working with, but also tier you up and get you out of that, as Travis said, black hole of 10 to 25 tier on Merch by Amazon. So again, big thanks to Nick Eden for joining us, and I look forward to being on his show as well. And a big thanks to you all for listening once again this week to the Print on Demand cast. As always, Travis and I are always super, super grateful that you guys take time out of your day, out of your commute, or what have you, however you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you for listening to this. And as always, if you guys have questions, if you have ideas, if you have yourself a unique idea or you have a question for Nick or what have you, the best way to do that is by joining us at printondemandcast.com/Facebook. Join the Facebook group. And you can also like the Print on Demand Cast page as well. Do both while you're at it. You're going to be searching Print on Demand Cast anyway. You're going to be right there. Like both, join both. We'd love to have you and love to hear your ideas, your kind of out-of-the-box ideas to approaching this, as well as we did Nick's. And let us know what your favorite part of this episode was. What was the favorite thing of yours that Nick offered up as a piece of advice or wisdom? We look forward to hearing from you guys as always. And also, you can also email us. info@printondemandcast.com is our email. You can let us know those same things. If you have more of a direct question, maybe you don't want people to read your question or what have you, we also have that email available for you. Mm-hmm. And as always, Travis, wherever there are podcasts, the PODcast is for everybody's listening pleasure. And I think the new Magic Question bumper may have earned us a 5-star review and rating. Maybe. Also, maybe a smidge of infringement, but we'll see. But yeah, if you're listening to us on any podcast platform that you use, thank you so much. But if you happen to use the Apple podcast platform, please take time and leave us a 5-star rating. Write a review if you have time, but it helps us get in front of the right crowd. And the easiest way to support the show, if you like what you hear, if you like this knowledge, if you like these interviews, if you like these episodes, if you like Travis, if you like me, if you like the 80s nostalgia, the easiest way to support the show is our merch store, printondemandcast.com/shop. Pick up a shirt, and all of the proceeds from that go to reinvesting into the show and the plans that Travis and I have to kind of grow this content because we enjoy doing it. We enjoy making it available for you and watching you guys take the tools to succeed and succeeding. That's why we started this thing in the first place, right?
Amen. Totally.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. For Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you next week right here on the Print on Demand Cast.
See ya.
Hey, babe. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.
So, guys, thank you so much for joining us one more time. And we'll see you next week right here on the Print on Demand Cast. For Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you next week on the.
That was awesome.
I cut myself short.
Yeah. You should keep doing that. That was good.
Yeah. There's a pregnant pause of what the hell is he going to do to get out of this time?
Should we leave this? Should we leave this in for people?
No. I think you're a faux pas at the beginning of this week's, and then next week, undoubtedly, I will at this exact same time at the end of every episode. Okay,
fair enough.